Hello out there. Sitting here with Apple, waiting to see if anybody shows up. Jen is here. Hello, Nancy. Hopefully it will be a party. We'll see how this goes. As you can see, Apple is here helping out. He's a little miffed because he wanted his blanket, but now is not the best time to pull out his blanket and let him snuggle in it. Oh, hello. Hi. Where are you guys from? See, Nancy, and I'm not sure how to say your nickname. S. Montalvio 210. Texas is supposed to be hot right now. Sandy, that's easier. Hi, Doreen. Hi, Sandy. Yeah, we luckily today it wasn't too hot here. We're getting into the 80s for the summer now, but today was a little cloudy, and I really like that. Oh, Snohomish. You're not that far away, Doreen. So, what are you guys doing today on this Saturday? I have been working. I have been working on future plans. Well, Nancy, you're going to get them, I think, next week. We're supposed to be getting into the 80s. Do you live near Snoqualmie Falls? Or wait, Snohomish is the other way, I think. Excuse my computer making noises. It's telling me that it's time to do the live stream. Oh, okay, up that way. Actually, I was looking at the Texas. Yeah, I get too close and it gets blurry. I was looking at the weather for Jen's area, and my other assistant, my local assistant, was looking over my shoulder, and we were both just cringing at the triple digits that are laid out there. I do not envy you guys. I can barely handle it in the 80s and 90s. I can't handle it in the 90s, but so now that Weaver's Web is out, I am working on Crystal Web, and I'm hoping that people are going to be excited about that book. Um, so I'm kind of like focused on writing and, oh, just getting the next year and a half planned out. And we will see what happens during that time. I make all the best of plans and then something happens and I have to revamp. But I think that's just life in general, you know. I'm glad to hear it, Sandy. It always makes me happy when people get something out of my books. And yeah, the web series, the Moonshadow Bay series, I really like writing. I was wondering whether I would enjoy it when I first started it, but since it's not cozy and it's definitely got some edge and spookiness to it, I really like the series. I really enjoy writing it. And January is a lot of fun to write. You know, she's a lot more sure of herself than some of my other characters. And that feels good because one thing I've learned as I've aged, I'm now in my 60s, I'm now 61, and it's so much easier to just blow off the things that bother you and say, I'm not dealing with this, go away, forget it. And I'm hoping that some of my characters come to that space too. I keep forgetting I should keep talking because I'm the only one talking here. Hi, Kim. Where are you from? I'm asking people, you know, where they're from here just to get a good idea. So we've got someone from New York, we've got someone from my neck of the woods, got a couple people from Texas. Cool. I've never been over on the East Coast. It's just, it's probably not something I'll be able to do now. I can't travel anymore because of the MCAS. But I always wanted to go over to the East Coast and see the trees during the autumn. It always seemed so beautiful from what I could tell on the pictures. And the Atlantic, from what I gather, is vastly different than the Pacific. Here, our ocean is rough and it's wild and it's cold and the beaches are rocky. We don't have the beaches like you guys do over there. So, oh, that's right. You have been over on that coast, Sam. I forgot. So, what's everybody up to this fine weekend? What are you guys doing? Anything exciting? I can't even remember what day it is. Good grief. Oh, it's 16th. Oh, today is the would have been one of my grandma's birthdays. I just realized I have one grandmother who was born on she was born on July 16th and one who was born on July 4th and my mother was born on July 31st. But they are long past. Oh, and Bridget's birthday is this month too. Bridget will be 14. Hello, Miss Novelist. Nice to see you. I'm just chatting here, just talking about this and that, asking people where they're from so I can get an idea. And, you know, talking about what I'm working on now, which is Crystal Web. I know the Northwest. That's one reason I write most of my work regionally, is because I know this area like the back of my hand. It's in my blood. And I like being able to really infuse the books with a sense of the setting almost being another character. Yeah, they are. Our new babies are so funny too. They are, well, Ellie has a maniacal look half the time, and Kiersey is a little more laid back, but she's in love with Mr. Apple. So she follows Mr. Apple around all the time and tries to lay on him, which normally wouldn't be a problem, except that Kiersey is over 10 pounds, Ellie is over 11, and Apple is barely 8. So, and if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask me. That will help me continue to talk for this next, what, half hour, hour, however long. Oh, and I'm wearing my watermelon dress today. When I bought this dress, I'm just rambling now, so it's like I've got a non-captive audience, so I'm just going to talk about what I want unless you guys ask me some questions. But when I first bought this dress, I wasn't sure I'd like it because I kept thinking watermelons on a dress kind of weird, but it kind of appealed to me, and now I really, really think it's pretty. Thanks, Jen. Actually, I got a very retro sense. It's sort of that retro goth rockabilly type style that I like. So somebody asked me a question. Thanks, Kim. Oh, that's true. Actually, I don't always talk to you about my ideas. First, Sam asks about new book ideas. Well, I'm going to be writing another uh, paranormal women's fiction series coming up, and it's called the Magic Happens series, and it has a 52 uh, year old protagonist. Let's see. Jen, can you keep watch for questions in case I miss any, please? Let me see. Where do I get my gift for dialogue? I listen to people. Seriously. Now, I'm going to tell you this is one thing that a lot of authors may not tell you, but most of us eavesdrop every time we can. And I've always, always been fascinated with people's conversations. Yeah, it seems rude, but it helps you get an idea for the flow of conversation. Dialogue is different than conversation, though, because you cannot write every little minutia that people talk about, or it will be boring. If you really listen to people, humans as a whole are pretty boring, except for weird snips that come in and out. Um, so you need to listen for the highlights of what people are talking about. Doreen, actually, there was the trip to Nemo Rock. That was the novella. I worked it into the book. I sort of worked the rest of the book around it so that it would end in that novella. So from the time they go on vacation, that's the novella that was in the Age to Perfection anthology, which is no longer available. I'm a media junkie. Sam kind of knows that, but we have our desks at opposite ends of the house, so he doesn't always see what I'm listening to, although he knows I watch a lot of trash TV. I mean, I watch Married at First Sight because I'm just fascinated by the train wrecks that people can be. And I watch cooking competition shows, and I used to be a huge fan of Criminal Minds and some shows like that, but the MCAS that I have causes stress reactions, And even if I know it's fiction, something very stressful that I watch can set me off. Yeah, Jen, I love being able having somebody to talk to about those. By the way, a new season of Married at First Sight just started. Miss Novelist, when I first started writing, was I nervous? Oh, honestly, I started writing when I was 3 years old. I knew I wanted to be a writer from that point on. I was learning to read, and I remember, I don't know how this came to me or what, but at one point I remember suddenly realizing that people made the books that I loved to read. And right then I was like, I want to grow up and make books. And that's all I ever thought about. Um, I wrote 7, 8 books before I ever got my first contract, which was in 1996. I got my first contract for a nonfiction book, but I had 7 or 8 novels in the closet before then. And honestly, there were a few times with the first couple books where there was that little sense of, am I a fluke? Can I do it again? Can I do it again? But I just sort of went, I stopped and I went, I've done it once. I'll worry about it when it comes. If I can't do it again, I'll worry about it when I realize I can't. And it never happened. So, I try to not let my nerves get the best of me because I'm a fairly confident person for things like that. And um, I just figured that if they entrusted me with a contract, bye, Nancy, thanks for showing up. If they entrusted me with a contract, they pretty much believed I could do it. And having someone believe that I could do it helped my belief in myself. Hi, Tigra. Tigra. I'm not sure how that's pronounced, but hello. We've just been discussing writing, and I've been finding out where people are from. So, what part of the country are you from, or are you from outside our country? Hello, Carol. Thank you. People may not know it, but Carol is my best friend, and I appreciate her coming to support me. That's what besties do. So, Tennessee. Okay, we've got several people from the southern part of the states. Hi, Sharon. Actually, a lot of them are. Hold on a second. Hey, Sam, I can see you. Um, my cats are they're my kids, and I have been a cat person since I was born. I was born into a house with cats. Um, Calicos and Torties and I always have a connection that's so much beyond anything I have with people or anything. And so most of the Torties in my books are based on my Torties. Um, hmm. I had a Tuxie, but she was a girl, and that was a long time ago. And I've had several tabby cats, and we had Morgan, who was part Bengal, and I had a Russian Blue at one point. So over the years, I've had many wonderful cats grace my life, and there will probably always be something like a cat in my books. I mean, it may be Raj the gargoyle, it may be Maggie the gargoyle from Otherworld, uh, Raven's ferrets, but to me, in my mind, they're kind of all cats. Oh, any other questions? Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about that. It's been so long since I've written those books. Yes, Jade, I could. Or I could put a really mean duck. When I was a kid, we had a dog, we had a duck, and we had a cat. And that duck was the meanest freaking thing. She used to pull my ponytail. She'd reach over my head, grab hold of my ponytail, and yank on it. She would nip my heels. And eventually, I mean, she used to walk around. She'd sit on my mom's feet when mom was hanging up clothes on the clothesline. She'd sit on the mop when mom was mopping the floors, because, yes, she was inside. And then somebody said they'd give her a home. So I guess my mom and stepdad gave her to them. And eventually, I guess we found out they ate her. And honestly, I didn't shed a tear. That duck just, she ticked me off. She was so mean. Oh, the giant ducks and siren song. Yes, actually, I did have ducks. Geese are mean. Geese are mean suckers. And hello, Amy. Oh, Maine. So we've got a couple East Coasters. Thank you, Tigra. Is it Tigra or Tigra? I like to pronounce people's names right. But I'm glad you like my books. It always makes me happy when people do. It's like, thank you, Doreen. And, I've been thinking off and on around it for a long time. I tried it once briefly, but I did it the wrong way. And this time, the only way to do it is to pretty much go all in as far as you can. And so I'm hoping it works. I'm trying to expand my audience. And also, it will reach a lot of people who maybe can't afford to read my books. And so that hits two birds with one stone. Ah, Miss Novelist. Well, the best motivation. I'm sorry, I just saw Sharon's comment. Yeah, geese will mug you. They get really nasty. Um, the advice I have for you, Miss Novelist, is this. And I'm going to tell you a little story. I've told it before, but that was in the past a bit. 1993, I was still unpublished and I was working on getting published. I was writing another novel, a fantasy novel, actually. And I had pneumonia. Um, couldn't afford to go to the doctor, so I hadn't been there yet. And I was coughing all the time. And I could barely get out of bed. I was laying on the sofa, and one night in December 16th, actually, I remember the date. I was really hungry, and Sam was off at work. Um, and so I got up and I went in the kitchen and I made some air popped popcorn because that was the only thing I had the strength to make. And I took it back and I sat on the sofa. And I was watching Murphy Brown. I remember that. And I took a bite of popcorn. And you know how when you cough, you start to inhale sharply, like, and then you cough? So I did that and I inhaled the kernel of popcorn. And there was an unpopped kernel in there. And it went down my windpipe. And I couldn't breathe. And there was nobody at home except for me. And I got up off the sofa and I was trying to dislodge it because I could not breathe and I was starting to get a little spacey. And so I I sort of wandered around, stumbled around the living room. And the next thing I knew, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was. All I knew is that I existed. And it was just sort of brownish black around me. And then I opened my eyes and I was on the floor. I had fainted. And So, it's like I saw the popcorn kernel laying on the floor next to me. When I had fallen, it had dislodged the kernel from my windpipe. And if it had not done that, I wouldn't be here today. I would be dead. I would have choked to death that night. And after I freaked out, had this private little freak out, called Sam at work, asked him to come home. I sat there and I thought, well, what would I regret if I had died tonight? And I realized that what I would regret the most, besides losing, Sam and the kitties, would be that I'd never published a book because that had always been my goal. And that night reprioritized my focus. And I realized very, very solemn truth is someday may never come. You may only have today. So what do you want to do with today? And for me, it was right. It's like, I want to write, I want to be published. And it's not like I lived every day like it was my last, but I kept that in mind. It's like, what is my focus? What do I really want? And so that kind of motivated me, is just remembering that someday may never come. It's like, what do you really want out of life? If it's to write a book, you'll make the time to write a book, because we never find time to do what we want. We have to make the time usually. Everybody's so busy. And so, yeah, that that was my biggest motivation, is almost dying and realizing that I hadn't accomplished my goals. And hello, people. I have noticed a few people have come in while I was talking. Hi, Victoria. Oh, wow, you're in Australia. It must be late there, or I would think it would be. And hello, Sarah. And I saw a couple other people. Um, Kim, I probably have, but when I went indie in 2016, there was so much stress surrounding that whole venture because of what had happened with my ex publisher and everything, that the stress load was immense for over a year. And then I started getting more and more symptoms. But I've had symptoms since I was a kid, and we just never put it together with anything. So, so I probably have. Um, I've had, yeah, like I've never been able to take hot showers. Even when I was a kid, hot water made me break out in a rash, and it made me itch. And being in the sun too long makes me itch. And I've had food allergies off and on throughout my life, and unexplained allergies. So yeah. Um, and Miss Novelist, I hope that that wasn't too heavy of advice, but seriously, it's basically the best motivation you can develop is really asking yourself, what do I want and what am I willing to put into it? And you just keep going. I mean, don't let people dissuade you. I was my own cheerleader for many years. My ex used to tell me, I will have to leave you if you become successful as an author. So, he wasn't much of a cheerleader. Now, that's very different to Sam, who is my number one cheerleader. Um, but most of my family was not very, very supportive either. Any other questions? Let me see. I assume it is morning where Victoria is. Yeah, you guys are going into winter. You're in winter right now. Oh no, Miss Novelist. I mean, it's like those memories. They're not bad actually, because they spurred on something good. I have memories far worse than that I'd rather not go into. But that was just a blip that turned into a big. It turned into a big motivation. How did Sam and I meet? Yeah, I moved in with his roommate. Basically, that seems to be the Yasmin method of meeting her partners, is moving in with them. So I was living in a bus, and I was living in a converted school bus, and I slept with a hatchet by my head so that nobody could have heard me on the back end of 5 acres. So I was prepared, and then people who were living in the house up front were squatting, and actually so was I. A big corporation owned the land, and they weren't doing any with it thing with it, and they were in Japan, so we all just decided to live there because I had left my ex and I had quit my job, and I was convinced I needed to settle down and write. So I lived in the bus. I read Thoreau for a living. Um, then the corporation found out we were living there, so they basically evicted us, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but a friend of mine, whose name was Rich, said, "You can come live with me." And I knew he had a roommate, and I was like, "I don't think your roommate likes me. I've met him once before, and I got the impression he didn't like me." And he was like, "No, no, it'll be okay." So I moved in with my friend Rich, and I was going to be sleeping in his room. We weren't exactly together. We were in one of those nebulous relationships. And so I moved in with Rich, and his room was so filthy that I slept in the living room for a while. And within a week, I noticed that Sam, his roommate, was watching me a lot, and I was getting a definite vibe from him, sort of like a "I'm interested" vibe. But I was just like, so this is fascinating. So Rich went off to stay with his folks for the weekend, and that left Sam and I alone. And I was determined to find out one way or another whether my suspicion was correct. So I fortified myself with a quart of, well, I didn't drink the entire quart, but fortified myself with some Captain Morgan. And I was sitting in the living room, and Sam was practicing drumming. He had some drum pads, and he used to be a drummer. And so I was sitting there reading through my poetry. And he asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm reading through my poetry." And he said, "Read me one." And I said, "Pick a number," because I had numbered them in the notebook. And he picked a number, and I opened it and started reading, and it was one of my erotic poems. But by the time I realized that, I couldn't really stop because he would probably ask me why I stopped, and it would be more awkward in my mind to stop to explain why I had stopped reading than to just read it through and get through it. So I read through it. He got up off his the seat by his drum pads, and he laid down on the floor near me, and he said, "Read me another." So I did, and it happened to be another erotic poem because I was just in that section. And so he then said, "Stop, stop, I can't take anymore." And I couldn't figure out whether he just didn't like my poetry or whether it was the fact that it was erotica. And then the next moment he was very silent, and he then asked me, "What are you thinking?" Well, I couldn't say what I was thinking. I was like, "I don't know. I don't know." And then he looked at me and he said, "Would you be interested in having a relationship with me?" Well, I had expected, "Do you want to go to bed together? Do you want to sleep together?" Which I would have said yes because he was cute and he was hot. And but that threw me, and I answered before I realized what I was saying, and I said yes. And We got together that night, and we've been together over 30 years. So, so yeah. Thank you, Sarah. That's how Sam and I got together. And Victoria, my ex, was a psycho. I left him when he beat me up. He blackened this arm from shoulder down to here. And that was the end of 9 years of emotional abuse and that had turned physical. Uh, so, and Sam proposed out of the blue 2 months later. And again, yes just popped out of my mouth. If I had stopped to think about it, I may not have said yes because I was extremely gun shy because of what had happened with my ex. But my gut just spoke for me. Hello, Rhiannon. Uh, Sandy, not on Bewitching Bedlam. No, that series is finished. Whisper Hollow is on an indefinite hiatus. I'm still fighting for my rights in the UK and all of its territories, and it's all kind of mixed up. I cannot publish my own version of the first two books over in any of the territories that the UK owns. It's a very complicated issue, and so I'm just like, just kind of put it to the side for now so I don't have to deal with that. I'm laughing at Amy's comment. Oh, thank you, Jen. Everyone take a look at Jen's comment there. I have a page on my site called The State of the Series, which will tell you what state every series I have is in, whether it's finished, whether it's on hiatus, whether it's still in production. So if you look there, you can always find it. I update it every few months. So thanks, Sarah. Yes, my husband is very, very hot. And I think, for being in our 50s and 60s, we're doing pretty good. Oh, so let's see. Any other questions? Oh, let's see. What else? Well, thanks, sweetie. I am, as I said, writing Crystal Web. I will be writing Shadow Magic, the first in the Magic Happens series after Crystal Web. Uh, Jade, Shadow Magic will come out after Crystal Web comes out. That's the first in the new Paranormal Women's Fiction series. Then I plan on writing the second one in that. And then I'm planning to write the next Night Queen book, the next lyrical book. And after that, I have plans, but I don't want to promise too much in advance. Um, but so yeah, another two. Well, another mat or the don't mind me. Um, the Crystal Web. So another Moonshadow Bay. Yes, I got so many series I can't remember most of them. Moonshadow Bay, Magic Happens, Night Queen. And I think I've got those all planned for the rest of the year. I think they'll all come out by the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. Providing everything goes well, providing we don't have any more meltdowns or, God's forbid, any more trauma like last year. Losing Morgan and Kaylee threw a big wrench in my schedule. Amy, you can still buy the books off of Amazon. You can buy the print books off Amazon. I am putting them on pre-order wide. So if you use a Nook or a Kobo or Apple, iBooks, you can still pre-order them while they are in pre-order, and they will be available for 1 week after release, and then they will go into KU. So you will have a chance to get all the books. And if you have KU already and you've read my books, it can really help if you reread them in KU at least once, because that helps me and, well, it helps me. Okay, yeah, as long as you pre order the books, you're fine there. So I wanted to give my wide readers, that when it's not in KU, it's known as being wide, which means it's on different vendors. So as long as you pre order them, my wide readers will still be able to get the books and read them. Unfortunately, I really wish Amazon would let you go into KU and not be exclusive, or not have to be exclusive. But until that day, it's sort of an either or situation. And since I've never really been in KU, this is a really good time just to jump in and see how it goes. Oh, wow, you lived over here for, wow. What area of the Sound did you live in, Victoria? Yeah, we have a yard full of cedars and fir, and we have actually a huge sequoia out there. Oh, okay, Kent. Yeah, we have a huge sequoia in our yard that's, I don't know, 100 feet tall at least, I think. Has to be at least that. And we have a weeping sequoia, which looks like this creature from out of a fantasy novel. It's just, it comes up and then it sort of goes across like this. It's like a park, which is a relief because every place around us has now been bought up by developers, and they have been short platting them and putting 2 to 3 houses on one big lot. So we are surrounded by these mansions around us. But since we are surrounded by trees in our yard, it's like we have our own little park. Did you have COVID, Sharon? That would be awful. I know a number of people who've had it, and several people who have long COVID. Yes. Raven actually did the covers for the Magic Happens series. I have the covers now. You can see the first one on my site. Jen, can you bring up a link in chat to the Shadow Magic page? Huh, that's an interesting term, cousin tree. Do you know why she called it that? But yeah, the weeping sequoia comes up and it bends and then it grows straight out and then branches grow off of it. Hi, Vicky. Oh yeah, I'm excited about writing Crystal Web. It's a lot of fun, and it's, well, I put a teaser in the Facebook group about what it's about, but you can read it on the page. We're going into Mothman territory with Crystal Web. I've always been fascinated by that story, by the legends, and the movie just haunts me. I love that movie, The Mothman Prophecies. And so when I found out it was based on actual legends and lore, and not just in the Virginia area, but around the world. So I I decided I wanted to tackle it. Of course. Go ahead, Miss Novelist. I welcome questions. Actually, I thought one night, I'm not going to say that it was that, but I had an experience when we lived over in Bellevue. Um, I'll get to your question in just a second. Had an experience over in Bellevue that reminded me of the energy of that movie. I was sitting out back. We rented a house over there, and I was sitting out back on the deck. And it was night. The stars were out, and I often like to go out and watch the stars. And I was sitting there, and I looked up, and this huge blob-like formation very flew by overhead, very, very low. No sound. There were two red lights on it, and there was absolutely no sound. It was very low flying, and I was so freaking terrified. And I don't scare easy, but I was so terrified that I jumped up and I ran inside because all I could think was, I cannot let it see me. I cannot let it see me. It felt sentient and it felt malign and it felt dangerous or alien, not malign, but just alien and dangerous. And I was like, I've got to get out of sight. So I ran inside and shut the door. And I didn't go out the rest of that night because I didn't want to know what that was. But yeah, it was hard to tell. It was darker than the stars. It blacked out the stars. Okay, let me get to Miss Novelist's question. If you want to get published, how would I suggest one do so? Well, there are many more routes than there were when I was first getting published. Indie publishing didn't exist really when I was writing when I was a lot younger, and it you either had vanity publishing, which was not good because vanity publishing preys on people and charges them a ton of money, and then leaves them sort of like in the lurch with all these books that they had to try and sell themselves. And back then, nobody would take them. There was no way to sell them. You couldn't even really get on the net to sell them, because it was prior to that. So, trad publishing was the only way. And I racked up 600 rejection slips from agents and editors and publishers before I got my first contract. Now you have the option for indie publishing as well. And, I went indie in 2016. And for me, it's the best thing I ever did. It's not easy, it's a ton of work. Um, it does cost some because you do need to pay for a good editor. Never just slap a book up without having it edited and looked through. But it's a whole lot less than it used to be for things like that. Um, I suggest that you get a critique partner or find a place. The Absolute Right forums. Jen, can you look those up and put the link in the chat for her? The Absolute Right forums were one of the better places to find people for critiques, things like that. Once you feel comfortable, once you feel like you're ready and you have an editor look over your book and, you know, help you smooth it out, help you get it refined, then you can go indie if you want. Now, as I said, it's not easy and it's not a get rich quick scheme. But if you're really diligent and you learn the ins and outs of publishing, and you can get a lot of information off the Absolute Right forums, um, it's a viable way to become an author. And also that way, honestly, one thing I love about it is I can write the genres I want to without being constrained by what the publishers tell me is trendy at this point. Okay, let me see. Do I have a favorite book out of all the ones I've written? I always say the last book's my favorite, but it's not always true. I do have a few that just stand out in my head. Oddly enough, one is the Chintz and China book, A Harvest of Bones, because I loved the story that I came up with. And how I came up with that story was kind of traumatic, but it had a good ending. So that sticks out in my head. I love writing the Wild Hunt series. The Wild Hunt series is very near and dear to my heart. The Moonshadow Bay series, um, Harvest Web, I loved. I mean, I love all of them, but I wouldn't publish a book I didn't love or wasn't proud of. But Indigo Court, the Indigo Court series, was one of my favorites to write because it was dark and it was like following a trail of breadcrumbs through a forest. What author, past or present, would I like to dine with? Well, they'd probably get bored by the food that I can eat, but let's see. Rebecca, the author of Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier. That's one of my favorite books. I would love to pick her mind. I've read a lot of her biographies about her. I read her book called Letters from Menabelli, which is a collection of her letters. Um, she was a fascinating woman, and I loved her work. Sandy, yes, I do. Ray Bradbury. I read him from the time I was young, very little, actually. And Ray Bradbury is the one author who taught me that words can sing, prose can be music. You can make music with your writing. It can sound, I'm not saying it can sound melodic, but Ray Bradbury's prose to me, his stories, they live in my mind. They haunt me. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, your husband likes Daphne du Maurier or Ray Bradbury, since you said his. But I cried the day Ray Bradbury died. I actually wrote, um, I guess it would be like a eulogy to him on my blog about it, about his death, because his work meant so much to me. It really was. I felt that was one thing I'd always wanted to be able to meet him and never have that chance. It's like there are people in life that I would love to have met, and when they die, that chance goes out the window. I feel bad when people ask me if I'm going to be doing signings or stuff because now with the reactions I have, it's dangerous for me to be out in public where I can either get a whiff of certain perfumes or get a whiff of garlic. Garlic can almost throw me into an anaphylactic reaction. The smell of it can do that. So it's kind of dangerous for me to go out on signings and to conventions now. So I feel bad when I tell people it's probably not going to happen when they ask me if there's a way they can meet me. Okay. How are we doing for time? Oh, wow. It's 10 till 6. Any further questions? I wish one of our kitties would have come in here. Oh, hold on. I am learning to clicker train the cat. Ellie! See if she actually does it this time. Ellie! Kiersey! Okay, the one time when I'm doing it for public. Vicky B, no, probably not, because those make so little that they're not. It's just not a economical use of my time. But I will be putting out at least one more that I got the rights back to. Ellie, yeah, well, trust me, this has been working, but they know they want to confound me. Oh, there she is, Ellie. Come here, baby. Well, you can see her in the back, right there. Ellie, you were asleep, weren't you? Who is my favorite author on the topic of magic and witchcraft? Me, to be honest. But other than that, Scott Cunningham is always a good choice. Dorothy Morrison. I know her, and I trust her work. And there's Sam. Um, Other than that, one of the best books I read, but I don't think it's out there anymore, so you'll have to search for a used copy, was called Global Ritualism, and it's by Denny Sargent. And I thought that was a brilliant book. Absolutely brilliant book. Yeah, Ellie and Kiersey are making themselves at home. You know, I miss my Kaylee so much. But but you know, the girls are making their mark in our home. And we miss Morgan. I do think that Kiersey came back, that Morgan came back as Kiersey. And I've had several instances where I look at her and I will see Morgan, and then I'll blink and it's Kiersey. And when we were first bringing them home from the shelter, had the carriers in the back seat, and I was sitting there, and it had snowed, so we were trying to get out of that driveway. And all of a sudden, heard loud and clear, "Hey, Mom, I'm back." And I looked around, and Kiersey was looking at me, and all of a sudden, I just got this glimpse of Morgan, and I was like, "Oh wow, you came back." Our kitties sometimes do come back to us. Mira Claire came back twice. Well, she came back once. Uh, my Circe kitty from years ago came back once. And Keeter came back as Morgan, and now Morgan came back as Kiersey, so she's back in our old home. And yes, I do believe in reincarnation, even for cats. Any other questions? Oh, Vicky, from what I can tell from your avatar, you have pretty pink hair. Oh, I'm sorry about that. It is so hard. I had a Luna too. I had a lovely Luna Torty, and we lost her in 2008, 3 days before we lost our Keeter, because Luna had pancreatic cancer and Keeter had chronic renal failure. And luckily, Keeter lasted 2.5 years after diagnosis, happy and comfortable until boom, just went really fast, thank gods. Yeah, it's very pretty from what I can tell. Oh, any other questions tonight? I should try a live stream when I'm doing some of my planning sometime. I have so many stickers and I have so much washi tape. It's actually almost embarrassing how much washi tape I have. I love the stuff. You know, I try. Do I have a favorite genre? Um, my favorite genre to write is sort of the cross between urban fantasy and paranormal romance. And to read, I read widely. I read paranormal romance, I read mysteries, I read thrillers, I read nonfiction, um I don't read a lot of urban fantasy. I'm very picky on the stuff that I read. Um I read the paranormal women's fiction. I read Amy Tan is one of my favorite authors. Um I read everything from those big old romances you used to get, like Valley of the Dolls. I loved that book. To anything but westerns, pretty much. The Cascade area. Are you talking about up in the North Cascades? Because we're right near the Cascades here. Actually, I might someday. It depends. See, for me, when I come up with the idea for a series, I don't so much decide where to put it as the way my process works is that I will something will spur off an idea. Hi, Ellie. And I will be thinking about it, and then I'll just sort of let it go. And then my subconscious works on the characters and the idea, and all of a sudden, the character will be in my brain, and where they live will be in my brain. It's on, if you've ever heard of the Clifton Strengths, which is well, it's a process for understanding yourself. One of my top strengths is called intellection, and that is sort of like my subconscious works like a computer. It works on its own and it lets me know when things are formulated. That's why I'm an intuitive writer. I don't plot. I cannot plot because it stifles the book. So I have to wait till the idea's right for me to start writing. And usually if I get, if I know what I'm going to be writing next, it'll work on a very um, subconscious level. And then when I'm ready to start the book, the information will be there. Sandy, only in a few of the series. N- Um, Moonshadow Bay, Whisper Hollow, and the Magic Happens series will all take place in the same world. So the characters could meet and have. Pagan from Whisper Hollow was in one of the Moonshadow Bay books. I don't do it as a matter of routine because, each character deserves their own series. But the characters from those three series can interact. For Otherworld, the only other series that would interact with Otherworld was the Fly By Night series. Those were written to be together. And other than that, I don't have any other series that overlap. And it would not make any sense for me to try and do a what if, where the characters from one world jump to another world, because the rules for the creatures and for the vampires and stuff are different in every world, and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work in a logical way in my mind. I agree, Vicky. I wish they could live a lot longer. But then again, we wouldn't meet as many of them, and so many more would be without homes. At least we have that knowledge. We can give homes to a number of fur babies over the years. So, does that make sense, Sandy, the way I explained that? Oh, neck is a little sore. Okay, good, good. Well, I think I am about ready to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As the live streams go along, I'm going to be doing more of these, so hopefully that they can become more smooth and become a little more fascinating as I go on. I'm not used to just sitting here. I'm used to sitting here talking to the camera when I'm recording a video, but I'm not used to sitting here interacting and realizing that I've suddenly been silent for like 10 seconds and it's very quiet and you know, maybe I should say something. Doreen, I'm glad that my writing advice uh, videos, that's the word. I'm glad that they help you. And Miss Novelist, if you don't know, check my channel here. I've got a lot of writing advice videos on the channel. So I am thankful for all of you who came to visit, and it was great talking to you, and we will do this again sooner than later. Bye bye, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I enjoyed it too.